Shout, for God has given victory. The walls of the city of Jericho were very, very tall. They were made of thick stones that reached all the way toward the clouds. The heavy wooden gates were shut tight. No one could go in, and no one could come out. A young boy named Jamin stood in the valley and looked up. He wondered, how will we ever get past such big walls? But God had a special plan. He spoke to the leader, Joshua, and told him exactly what to do. It wasn't a plan that used ladders or hammers or even swords. It was a plan that required trust and very quiet feet. Zimri, one of the priests, began to prepare. He took his special trumpet, called a shofar, and held it close. On the very first day, the march began. The priests carried the golden ark of the covenant, and the people followed behind. Jamin stepped into line right next to Zimri. Shh, the leaders reminded everyone. They were not allowed to say a single word. All they could hear was the sound of their own footsteps, crunch, crunch, crunch on the dry ground. On the second day, they marched around the city again. On the third and fourth days, they did the same thing. Jamin kept his lips pressed tight. Even when his legs felt a little bit heavy, he looked up and saw the guards on top of the walls watching them. The guards looked confused because the Israelites were so quiet. Jamin knew that even in the silence, God was working. By the sixth day, the sun was hot and the air was still. The Israelites had circled the city 6 times now, once for each day. Zimri gripped his shofar firmly. He didn't blow it yet, and he didn't say a word. He just kept his eyes on the path ahead, trusting that God's way was the best way, even if it seemed strange. The 7th day arrived. The sun rose with a bright, pink glow. "Today is the day," Jamin whispered to the morning breeze before the march began. This day was going to be different. Instead of walking around the city just 1 time, God told them to march around it 7 times. Jamin tied his sandals tight and got ready for a long walk. Around and around they went, 1, 2, 3 times. Jamin and Zimri stayed perfectly in step with the rest of the people. 4, 5, 6 times. The city of Jericho felt like it was getting smaller and smaller as their faith grew bigger and bigger. They were tired, but they were excited to see what God would do. On the 7th turn around the city, the line of people stopped. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. Joshua gave the signal. Zimri stepped forward, took a very deep breath, and blew his shofar with all his might. A long, loud blast echoed off the stone walls and filled the entire valley. "Shout!" Joshua cried out. Jamin opened his mouth and let out the biggest, loudest shout of joy he had ever made. All the people shouted together with a roar of faith. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. Crack! Rumble! The mighty walls of Jericho began to tumble down like a pile of toy blocks. The dust cleared and the way was open. The tall walls were gone and God's people were victorious. God had kept his promise and showed everyone his amazing power. Jamin and Zimri stood on the fallen stones, looking up at the sky. They knew that when they obeyed God, nothing, not even the biggest wall, could stand in their way.